Hey guys, welcome back to the Dev Dump, perhaps the #2 podcast for indie game dev. Unfortunately, guys, the #1 spot was taken from us by Where's My Semicolon.
So sad.
But whether you're new to game dev or just love gaming, you're in the right place. I'm PolyMars, and I'm joined by my boys Barji, Reece Geodude, and Goodgis.
Yo, yo, yo.
What's up, friends?
How are we doing, guys? How
We're
we doing?
back again.
So this episode is dedicated to a question from Daz T. What is your favorite game engine and why?
Okay, so I actually really like this question, and I'm sure you guys are going to be very annoyed with me by the end because I have a lot to say. But I think, I don't know, I feel like Reece should go first.
Me? Why me?
I don't know. I'm thinking I need today.
Boys, this
You're
could be the
singling
last
me out, man.
episode. Honestly, this is going to be an
Okay.
intense debate.
Yeah, probably. The next episode will be the breakup episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my favorite game engine is GameMaker.
Oh.
Why?
Boo.
Just because
Aw.
it's a nice engine. And it's the first thing I used. And I've been using it for a long time.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Did you start in GameMaker Studios?
Yeah, no, I started in game whatever it's called, GameMaker 8 or whatever. I started that like I don't even know, like 10 years ago or something. Like as a drag and drop, and then GameMaker Studios came along like way after, and then I moved on to coding in it and just kind of stuck with that. So
Yeah, I
So what do
actually used GameMaker 8.1 a long time ago, and then I was stuck for a while before I eventually like switched to Unity, I guess.
Yeah, that was the one that I'd always like when I was like 12. I would always like try and make games, but I'd be really bad and I'd copy loads of people's code. It was always in GameMaker.
Yeah, that was
Great.
basically me, and then I moved on to stealing code in Unity.
Yeah.
It's
Nice.
funny, when I started using GameMaker, it was GameMaker 7, so it was even older, and there was like no community. Like it was terrible. Like the engine was actually pretty garbage. I didn't realize it then. But so Reece, I'm curious, what do you like about GameMaker that you're still using it? Is it just like, is it familiar? Is it comfortable?
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
like
I
how
actually-
it works?
I get this
Go ahead.
question a lot. I know a lot of people have like, a lot of issues with GameMaker, and by no means do I think that it's a perfect engine. For the people listening in, every engine's gonna have their downfalls, and I think that GameMaker might have a lot, but really it just comes down to, is it able to do what I want it to do? So I make a lot of 2D pixel art games, top down or platformer, and I port them to Steam, and that's pretty much it. So for what I do personally, it serves me exactly what it needs to do. I don't do a lot of networking. I don't do a lot of porting and stuff like that. So for all of my concerns, it does what it needs to do, and I know the engine well enough that I can actually make something good like using that tool. So I think honestly that's like as far as it goes. Really is like, by no means is it the best engine, but it's a really easy engine to pick up, and you can prototype things fairly quickly. So
Yeah, I feel
will
like
go ahead.
I feel like a big thing is just like comfort, like being able to use an engine
Yeah.
that you can do things in. It doesn't matter if it's like
That
the
you
best
know.
or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
I will say I have a good story and a bad story about GameMaker. The first one is actually one of the moderators for our Fear Discord. He's actually working on like a fan online game for one of my games I made in the past, and he's using GameMaker Studio, and the networking actually seems to work pretty well. I'll say, like, back in the day, the networking was horrible. It was so bad. It was garbage. So that's
For sure,
one
yeah.
good news. Like, I feel like the engine's improved quite a bit. Another thing is my brother, when he made Rocket Pods, he had so many issues where like GameMaker was literally trying to delete itself. It was like trying to delete the file, and he had to literally stop the game. He had to like remake part of the part of the game because it was deleting itself, and he had to like go in and delete some like DLL files or something. It was really weird.
That sounds weird.
And
Wait, was that GameMaker Studio or like
It
GameMaker
was,
8?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was GameMaker Studio 2 because
No, I've experienced the same thing. I've experienced a corruption file too, actually.
Yeah, so that's one
I
thing.
mean, I've been using it for like 5 years, and it's only happened once. So I wouldn't say that it's a huge deal breaker, but it definitely that happened to me as well with the corruption issue.
That,
So
that happens literally every game engine. I mean, it practically every time you open up Unity, it happens. So just kidding.
Yeah, that's
fair enough.
true. No, I remember when I was like
Fair enough.
10. When I was 10, I made this Minecraft game in GameMaker 8. It was like top-down 2D Minecraft. I was so proud of it. And one day I went to open it because I was trying to add like a mob or something. I thought it was so cool. And it just said like, this file is not a GameMaker like 8 file. I was like crying for like a week. I'm like, my Minecraft game. And that's when I
Yeah.
basically stopped using GameMaker. I stopped making games for like a long time after that.
That's where the vendetta started.
Yeah. I hate GameMaker.
Okay, so
Not
speaking of glitches, Jack, I'm curious to see your thoughts on your favorite game engines.
Speaking
and
of
why
glitches,
you...
huh? Speaking of glitches.
Speaking of glitches,
You're just a bug.
Yeah, I mean,
actually, before you,
go on. Sorry.
yeah, go on.
No. You say.
Oh no, I was just gonna say you could briefly explain that story because I feel like nobody really knows that except for us.
Wait,
This glitch,
the glitch?
how you overrated your entire computer.
Well, that wasn't a Unity thing, but I'll explain it real quick.
Nah, it was because of Unity. Unity sucks.
I wasn't even referencing that. I was
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that either. I think that was only
so
Reece who
nuanced.
I mean, I guess I
Yeah.
have to say something now, though, or people are gonna be a little.
Sure.
So yeah, Goodgis was telling me about how good Linux was, so I thought I'd move over. I thought I'd have a go, and I
Idiot.
may or may not have overwritten the drive that had my source code on for my latest game, but we're all good. I backed it up beforehand. I backed it up like a week before I released it, so there's only like a level gone. But yeah, not really a Unity bug. But yeah,
Power
Unity.
of Linux.
Yeah, the power of Linux. Never use it. Vendetta, nah, I'm kidding. It's cool. Fair
enough.
Yeah, I'm kind of vanilla with Unity, but I feel like the issue with Unity is that it's so accessible that there's so many bad games in it that people just have sort of a vendetta against Unity, right? Because anyone can pick it up, anyone can follow the Bracky's tutorial on making that dodging game, and release like a small game, right? So the internet is just populated with really bad Unity games that people have made as their first game. So at least for a gamer, someone who's not a game developer, Unity is seen pretty badly. But on the flip side of that, if you look at games made by like Landfall, so like Cluster Truck, Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, it just shows that Unity really has all of the tools that it needs to make a good game. It's just how you utilize those tools, right? And it's like people make the comparison between Unity and Unreal all the time. And it's like Unreal out of the box looks amazing. Unity doesn't, right? But you can make it look just as good. And I feel strongly that Unity as an engine
For sure.
is
Yeah.
one of the best all-rounders, right? Because you can do pretty much anything with it if you know what you're doing. But then again, if you pick it up as a beginner, then you're not going to make something great. And because so many people have done that, it's built up a bad reputation. I am curious as to go on, sorry, Reece.
I think that I think it's interesting because I think that you're obviously not like, to like downplay your point, but I think that kind of view is a lot more like old Unity, where that was kind of like one of the big things that everybody knows, but you can't make good games with it. Whereas now, Unity definitely has they've upgraded so much over the years that they are kind of like a rival with Unreal 100%. In most ways, right? And so I think that people now might not even understand what you're saying, because I think that a lot of people now honestly see Unity as a very reliable
I would
game
agree
engine.
with that in the game dev space, but at least for people
for
who
sure.
just play games, that reputation's never really gone. Like, I know whenever I get asked what engine I use by someone who doesn't make games and I say Unity, it's like, oh, of course you do. Like,
Right,
That's obviously the go-to for like beginners, and so many bad games have been
Yeah.
made with it. You see that made in Unity trademark thing, and you already know you're in for a ride.
Yeah, I know all of my gamer friends, when they open up an app on their phone and they see made in Unity, they're always like, "Oh, okay, this game's gonna be bad."
Yeah, it's definitely built up a bad reputation, but it's not a bad engine, in my opinion.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I actually have an opinion that is gonna kind of shock you guys. You're gonna think that something's wrong with me, but
Might
I
have to
actually
leave the
think
call
that I think that Uni is actually, as of right now, it's probably one of the best engines you can use.
Okay.
Like think about it, games like Risk of Rain 2, like that's made in Unity.
Yep.
What it has like the physics built in, all of this stuff. Like think about it. It's like I don't know how big the business is. It's like $1 billion or a couple $1 million business. They have so much money that they sink into. There's
Yep.
tons of learning material, and I think that the engine has like there's so much to it, but that's also where like my problems with it come into play. Like I feel like my biggest issue is that things break all the time because there's so many dependencies, there's so many things. And if you're me and you're good at, breaking things and like just you're trying to figure out how to make a game, like I don't know, every time I used it, I always had issues and things never made sense and they changed it so often. Like
Yeah.
I would be using materials. I'm like, why does this look terrible? And then I'm like, oh, I got to use new render pipeline materials or whatever. And then I had to redo stuff and post processing. It's like, oh, that's the legacy version. But
Yeah.
I think if you can navigate that,
Yeah.
it still probably is a better tool, like compared to something like, I don't know, like Godot. Godot is, it's so small compared to Unity, and it's not quite, like developed enough to really compete on. And
Yeah.
that's like long term. Like, if you're just trying to make a basic game, you can, or like even you're not trying to make like World of Warcraft, you could, actually maybe you could make it in Godot. I'm having like really bad comparisons, but I think if you're not trying to do anything super crazy graphic intensive, it's weird. It's like old Unity is like what Godot is, and like
Yeah.
now, like that perception when
Right.
people look at
Yeah.
Godot, like oh, it looks so bad, and Unity is unreal.
Yeah,
And
it definitely
Unreal
has
today-
like an issue of bloat with Unity. Like I feel like if I'm making something very small, I shouldn't be using Unity for it because it just feels way too overkill.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point for me
That's
when
fair,
using
yeah.
Unity is just more of like an inconvenience than it's like worth for the kind of stuff I make, I guess.
It's
yeah,
like making
it really
a
does
2D
depend
game
on
in
the type of
Unreal.
game. Yeah, exactly.
I know-
Exactly.
People do it all the time. Like, what are you doing? It's like, I don't know. It's extreme, man.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Like, what I don't get why you'd build upon that engine. Like there's things like Godot which are much more lightweight that you could build upon. And I just feel like if you're making a really small game, then Unity might be a little overkill. But saying that, it is quite good for beginners, regardless.
Yeah. At the same time, yeah, like people often like let that kind of stuff get in the way from using it. But like, if your end goal is to make a game, Unity, you can make whatever, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that I think that any engine will have its strengths, but also most engines you can basically do any kind of like starting game, like not technically doing like a 3D or 2D because some engines are strictly 2D and some engines are strictly 3D, but with the skill set of whatever the engine has, like most engines are going to be able to, at least do something like whatever, like starting a game or something. Like you could build a game in whatever engine or programming language and that
Yeah.
would still be fine, but
I mean, getting
everything's
started,
gonna have
when like getting started, it doesn't really matter. Like obviously, all
Yeah.
of these things we're discussing about the engines are like if you're going to make a commercial game, then you're going to want to look into these things and what engine is best
Yeah,
for you. But
yeah.
if you're starting out and you want to make like a little platformer game,
yeah,
it really
you can use
doesn't
whatever
matter.
you
Yeah,
want.
Exactly.
You can make it in Pie game.
Exactly. Well, I was saying this beforehand. Pygame, if I was to go back and say like recommend anything for someone to begin with, it would be Pygame because Python's so easy to learn. You don't really have to worry about syntax a lot of the time because it's very basic.
And you don't have to worry about
Right.
importing 12,000 packages from the Unity
Exactly.
package manager.
It's so plus it would teach things quicker than Unity teaches because Unity does so much for you. That I felt like for the first year of using Unity, I didn't know much. I felt like I was being carried by the engine a lot. Whereas with Pygame, I feel
Right.
if you start with that, it's not so insane that you couldn't do it, but it's going to teach you a lot about like
Yeah.
the behind the scenes stuff.
That's actually
So
kind
what
of
about you guys? Like what would you guys recommend if you were to
Well-
restart your journeys? Like what would you guys have used?
I would say Godot, and it's because it's GD script is based off of Python. It's basically Python, so it's easy to start coding. The 3D in Godot is stupid simple. Like, I struggled so much to create anything basic in Unity, and just because C sharp is like, and I know C++, but C sharp is just like, it's a tough language, especially if you're starting out. So if you have like no knowledge whatsoever, and you have to pick between, I just feel like Godot is like so super straightforward. There's some things I like. I just made a video about this recently, and so many people told me that they couldn't figure out like game. They tried to make games before, it made no sense. They tried GameMaker, they tried Unreal, they tried Unity, and it wasn't until they used Godot that they're like, oh, okay, this makes sense. I don't think that's the case for everyone.
I
think
do agree with you.
sometimes
Though. As someone who started with Unity, I would not recommend it. I just
Yeah,
you
I
have to
agree.
be very committed because it is difficult, right? And when I'm sure everyone can relate to this, when starting out making games, it's so hard to get into a position where you're like, okay, I can actually make a game now, right? For the first for the first few like months, even you don't know what's going on,
You're just following tutorials.
Yeah, googling everything,
looking
trying
up,
to figure it out.
Yeah.
And you just don't know what's going on. And with Unity, that's so difficult to get out of. It's so easy to fall into the trap of searching up absolutely everything for every
Yeah.
feature of your game and
Yeah,
building
exactly.
it on that. But Unity is a bad starting place for that because it does so much of the heavy lifting for you, and it's not easy either, that it's just a bad medium. It's a lot of work for a little payoff compared to something like Pygame or well, I've not used Godot, but I imagine Godot.
That is the good thing about Unity, though, is that you don't need to know how to code if you just Google everything and copy it into your project.
Yeah,
'Cause
I think
there's a
it's
lot of
so
there's a lot of
mainstream that-
resources.
Yeah, everyone's
Yeah.
issues are
Yeah.
online, and you can just look up like
True.
how to make it like a really niche thing, and it's like, okay, this is mine now.
Unity's got to be one of the most documented pieces of software.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, you can search anything, the most niche thing, and someone will have had that issue before. It's insane.
That literally happened. I was making a survival game like a year ago, and down to like the nitty gritty details, like how do I make this axe chopping effect in a survival game, and like everything, every little detail I had a question about, there's a video on. And it's funny
Mhm.
because
It's insane. It's so
like,
weird.
it's a year and a half later, and I'm trying to like recreate that in Godot, and it's like you read the manual, and even the manual sometimes like, good luck. It's like, oh man, like you kind of have to look at examples and stuff. Definitely like a different type of learning, but I think you're actually learning more because you actually have to know what you're doing instead of just like copying and pasting someone's code.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
But I think that goes
okay,
back
I
to
actually have like
Sorry.
I have a yeah, I was just gonna say I have like an interesting question, but well, first of all, like was everybody kind of like in that stage, like, just looking up tutorials online and like, piecing together
Oh, definitely.
how to make a
yeah.
game?
Yeah, just piecing things together, I guess. For
Okay,
me, it was
so-
mainly like other like people's projects. I'd look at their code and I'd be like, okay, like I tried to add stuff to it and just
Right.
like piecing bits together.
So my question is like, how did you get out of that? Because I feel like a lot of
That's a good
people,
question.
you kind of get stuck in that like tutorial hell, basically, where all you can do is basically just look up a tutorial and figure out, from that video, copy. So how did you guys break out of that, I guess, is my question,
Mhm.
to develop whatever you want?
I
have
guess.
to say,
Oh wait, go ahead.
yeah, because I just started picking up, like I said, Godot. I think it hasn't even been a year that I've used Godot. Like, and so when I first started, Godot had like, I actually tried it a year or two before, and I hated it because I didn't understand it, and my brain was too small to understand. So getting familiar with the engine, I literally watched like 3 or 4 tutorials a day on just the editor part and what things did, and then
Yep.
and then I started to make a game. I'm like, I'm gonna make a really basic game where you do this thing, and so I think it was within a week or two. And like, if you're just learning programming for the first time, it's gonna take longer. But I was doing that, and then I was doing Python tutorials. Even though I already knew Python, I was just doing a refresher. And I think it was about like 2 weeks that it took for me to finally be like, oh, this thing does this, and then I don't even need to like, I don't even look up how to make a material or how to pick up an
Mhm.
item and stuff like that. And then I think eventually you get to a place where if you forget how to do it, you always have a game where you did it before, and then you can look back like, oh, how did I do that again? And you're like, oh, I did it like that. I don't know. I reference older projects after I get out of that tutorial stage. But I don't know, Jacob, you're gonna say something.
Oh yeah, I agree with oh, I guess for me, like how I started to answer the question is um sorry, my like brain just like spaced out. Anyway, but basically like I was saying, I kind of already answered Reese when I said like I was just piecing things together, and
Yeah.
yeah, that was all actually.
So one real quick question I have for you, Jacob, because I don't think we touched on it. Like, you don't really have like a set game engine that you use all the time. Is there like, do you have any preferences on engines you like better than others? Because you're kind of like a nomad when it comes to that.
Yeah, I guess so. I started like Jack with Unity before I knew any coding, and I guess back then I kind of like agreed with what Jack was saying. Like what I was learning was kind of useless outside of Unity. Like I was learning how to use games, which I guess is fine if your end goal is to make games. Like if you want to release a commercial game, become a game developer, then use a
Yeah.
game engine, I guess. So the decision of whether or not like to use a game engine really depends on what you're trying to do. And I said this in the first episode, but um I guess game dev is just a way for me to get better at coding. And with making games without an engine, I feel like I've learned so much that's like seriously so cool and also like translatable to anything where I feel like it doesn't matter what I use. Like, I guess that's also because my games are simple enough where I'm not relying on anything that's specific to any game engine. It's just a matter of learning like the basics of how to use something. And I think it's allowed me to do a lot of cool projects that I would have never considered if I was still using Unity, like
Yeah.
making Twitter bots, stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree
Mhm.
with that.
For sure.
Because with Unity, I definitely feel that a lot of the stuff in Unity you're learning and it can't be used anywhere else. Like what you were saying. Like you feel like these things are just Unity specific and you have to teach yourself so much about the engine. But then if you want to go outside of Unity and just code in like raw C sharp, it's difficult because you've built this dependence on like the Unity libraries and all the features of the
Yeah.
engine.
Going from Unity to like not using Unity was the hardest thing for me. I made like a Flappy Bird clone. It took me so long. It took me a week.
Yeah.
I was like so lost. But once I did that, like the skills I learned outside of using Unity, because I'll still go back to Unity for like making 3D games if I want to do VR stuff. I'll go back to Unity. And I noticed that everything I've learned outside of Unity transfers perfectly to Unity. And I'm able to make things that if I would have stuck with Unity, I probably would have never learned how to do those things because I was comfortable fine with what I was doing in Unity. It didn't really force me to learn how to do like other types of like programming practices and things. So going outside of Unity has made me better at using it too. And just being able to translate my skills to like anything. And I feel like that's also been beneficial from like a YouTube perspective because I also mentioned this in an earlier episode, but I guess ultimately for me, I mainly use game dev as like a tool to create YouTube content. I never really thought about being like a commercial like indie game developer. And I guess the skills I've picked up from making games without a game engine have helped me make like more unique projects that I guess has helped me stand out a bit.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure.
one interesting point
Right.
too, like
That's
what
interesting.
you're saying about the languages. I think like if you're using Unity and you're using C sharp and stuff like that, it's hard. Yeah, like you're saying, like you shouldn't learn code that's just specific to an engine. I think like just learn C sharp in general. Like if you're listening out
Yeah.
out there and you use Godot or Uni, whatever, like if you're using Godot, learn Python. I think and even if you are using Godot, learn C++, use it, learn a different language and see how it works. I actually, because I grew up using GameMaker, I used GML, which is like, it's kind of based off of C. But then when I, was actually working on other programs outside of that, like GML doesn't really apply to a whole lot of things. It's a lot easier of a C language. So then I took the time. I learned C++. Obviously I don't know all of it, but and as I was learning C++, I realized I'm like, there's all these things that I'm missing. And then Godot got way easier because I don't know why I didn't know how like classes or functions worked because you never like
Mhm.
that doesn't really happen in GML. I'm sure it's possible, but you
Right.
just didn't really do that, or people didn't do it very often. So learning how even a function works, all this other stuff. Then when you try a different language or you go into a new game engine, it's just so much easier. So I definitely recommend like no matter what engine you use that you try to, learn a language. And if you hate programming, there's some people that do, like use something like Scratch or Construct or GDevelop or something,
Yeah.
These people like, are Vimlark out there. He's got a perfectly, good channel where he's making stuff in Construct, and I've made MMOs with Construct. So it's all based on preference and what you want to get out of it in the future.
Yeah. I guess to answer how I got out of that tutorial hell, as you called it, Reese, and going on from Goodgis' point, I definitely felt for like the first year of making games that all of my programming knowledge was like very specific to Unity. Like if I went outside of it, I tried to make something else. I felt like I didn't know much about
Yeah.
how actual C# worked.
Yep.
I felt like I was basically writing in this language that was Unity specific. And when I first tried to make a game outside of Unity, which was my first big project, it was just so overwhelming because there was all these new things that I hadn't used before. Like Unity obviously taught me the basics up to like classes or whatever, but beyond that, it's just I didn't know a lot at all. So going out of like the engine definitely taught me a ton of stuff. But yeah, getting out of the tutorial sort of thing, like starting off with Unity, I definitely just recommend making as many games as you can and as many different games as you can. And obviously, starting out, if you don't know how to program, then you're not going to be able to make an amazing game off the bat. So the best thing to do at the beginning is to just break the problem down and search everything step by step, right? And if you do that for 3 or 4 games, eventually you're going to be like, oh wait, I need to do the same thing again. So, oh wait, I remember how to do that from the last time. And it's really just about that. It's about reiterating over things and trying to challenge yourself. If you give in every single time and try not to solve the problem, then you're not going to get anywhere. You kind of have to, like, even if it's really bad code, try and solve the problem before like searching up an answer, right? Because you can always replace the code. But if you fix like a problem in really bad code, at least you fixed it, right? And you did that. And then the next time you'll know, okay, so there's this other way of doing it and it's cleaner. And definitely for me, I just felt like limiting myself and like challenging myself as much as you can is definitely the best way you can learn all those things and get out of just searching everything up. So
Yeah,
Sure.
that's a good point. Like, I could not answer that earlier, but now that you're saying it, that makes sense. I think for me, it was like it was like weird because I never really like learned how to like code in Unity or anything. Kind of forced to get out of that when I wanted to like do things like add smaller things to like bigger like systems. Like say I watch a tutorial on how to make a platformer, which I did. I made like one of my first games was a speed running game. I'm never gonna show it off on my channel because it's pretty bad, but it was like a speed running game, and I used a tutorial to make the like platformer movement and stuff. I'm like, okay, but then I wanted to add like a timer to it. I'm like, what? So I had to watch another tutorial on how to add a timer. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And like that tutorial like broke down like different things. I'm like, okay, so if you can make a timer stop when you hit an object, then you can probably do other stuff. And I'm like, wait, I can just make a game then.
yeah.
Yeah.
If that makes
Yeah.
sense at all.
It's all about breaking it down
Yeah.
into as many little problems, like decomposing it as much as you can. That helps so much more than you'd think. Because obviously when
For
you
sure.
first approach a game, it's like, oh, all these different things that I've got to do. How am I going to get to the end, right? But if you break it down and you say, okay, I need to do this thing and then I can do this thing, right? So step 1, get the movement working. Okay, you've got that. Now add a jump. Now add a timer. Now add some score, If you just break it down into every little piece, like that is definitely the best way of learning. Even if you are searching
For
up
sure.
those things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jack. For me, like it was 99% just like making, prototype after prototype after prototype. I feel like I was in that tutorial, you know, just searching for a really long time where I couldn't do anything without it. I didn't understand programming. I think when I started programming, I think I was in like grade 10 or something. So it was like 14 or 15. I don't know if that's like early or late, but
That was the same for me
I
too.
had no
same.
experience. Yeah, like I had zero experience. Never had taken a tech class or anything like that. So for me, it was, you know, just looking up tutorials, how to make a platformer, and then how do I make a camera move. And then, you know, after a few prototypes, I kind of just decided like, I'm not going to learn anything from, you know, like being able to do this. I'm not going to be able to make games on my own. Because I've always, I think at least, been like a creative person. And so I've always wanted to do things a little bit outside the box that maybe I couldn't find a tutorial on. So, like, I guess it's maybe not great advice, but I just kind of told myself, like, I just made a pact with myself and just said, you know what, I'm going to make a full game and I'm going to look up zero references. And that's where my YouTube channel started with the game Shield Shock. I never looked up a reference. That was the first game I'd ever done without using a tutorial, and then I made a YouTube series about it, and you know, just kind of like the step by step process of how that worked. And then from there, you know, the game wasn't good, but the entire challenge
Yeah.
was to do everything on my own. So even with like the sound effects and music and stuff, or creating the cover art for the game and publishing it on Steam, everything was done by me. Only me, 100%, whatever. So
Yeah.
it was just like a challenge for myself, basically, that I said, I'm going to take 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, you know, figure this out on my own with the little bit of knowledge that I've learned from following tutorials and copying people's code. And, you know, even if just figuring out how to make my character jump, if that takes me a week, then that takes me a week.
Yeah.
But if I can figure it out in my own way and
Yeah.
you know, do it on my own time, then you know, eventually I got to figure things out. So yeah, I mean, programming, literally all it is just problem solving. Everything is broken down into a problem and a question that you have to answer. So you know, when you go that step above to thinking about game logic, you know, I want to make a platformer, those are also just problems that you have to break down into: how do I move left to right, how do I jump, how do I attack. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, I
Yeah.
think it's a good skill to learn.
And I
It's
guess
just like problem solving.
to like reiterate my point from earlier, like if you can try to solve any problem in any way, then do it. Rather than like searching up a thing. If you have any inclination on how to do it,
Yeah, exactly.
then try. Even if it's terrible code, because then you can always replace
even if it's
it.
inefficient.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you can't figure it out, just private message Reece. He'll give you all the answers.
Yeah, my DMs are open, guys.
Oh boy.
He's gonna love that.
24/7 hotline, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question that's a little off topic. It's kind of, it's actually one someone submitted it, and that is, are you ready for this? Can I get a drum roll? No, we can't. We don't have the budget for it.
No. We're
Um,
not Where's My Semi.
the question is, what is your favorite OST official soundtrack? It could be from a game, could be from a
Official.
movie.
Ooh.
It has to be official though.
I've got an amazing
Yeah.
answer for this one.
Official.
Go for it.
Okay.
Club Penguin.
For sure, for sure.
Nice.
It's not exactly official. It was kind of pieced together from the internet, but Club Penguin's soundtrack is amazing, and I will fight anybody who disagrees with me on that.
Personally, I think the better soundtrack is the DS game Club Penguin Elite Penguin Force.
Yes,
It like
oh my
basically
God.
remixed.
Oh man.
There were so many great remixes. It was like I was actually listening to it today. I was working on my video. It literally had
Oh my
the
God.
Club Penguin DS soundtrack in the
God.
background. I'm like dead
That's
serious.
something. Like I listen to, you know, old school RuneScape music all the time, or like those
Oh,
old
Me
like
too. Good
old
job, man.
World of Warcraft and stuff like that. But that's Club Penguin is one of those things I totally forgot about. I'll have to listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't heard that soundtrack in probably like 10 years.
Man, it's so good. The
Like-
ice fishing theme. Gotta love it.
Okay, so mine is I kind of have two. I mean, it's not my favorite, but it's one of my favorites. First off, Chrono Trigger OST is like fantastic. I've listened to it so many times that when I actually saw it in the game, it was weird. I was like, oh, it's from this game. Like I forgot what game it was from just because I listened to it without playing the game so much.
Never.
And then the other soundtrack, which I was just jamming out to today, was Age of Empires 2. It's fantastic, like weird, like early 2000s instrumentation, and I don't know, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I've never heard either of them.
Yeah,
I
not as
love
good
Age
as
of
Club
Empires.
Penguin,
What?
unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm with you.
I
on
feel
Age
like
of
we should
Empires,
play
too.
a snippet of the Club Penguin ice fishing thing. It's copyright free, but I feel like Goodgis, you gotta listen to this. You gotta reminisce.
I think that for me, I also have two. So I think that like based off of nostalgia only, like I would say basically any Zelda track, but specifically like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask.
Sure.
I'm not old
Are
enough.
like really classic and just iconic, I guess. It just like, brings me back to my childhood. We played a lot of Zelda, so any kind of Zelda music just like I just really enjoy.
Yeah.
But personally, like my favorite like actual original soundtrack, at least game wise, is Hyper Light Drifter. I don't know what it is. Well, I do know what it is because I've listened to it over and over and over. But like, the weird like cyber sounds that they have in there, it just like for some reason it feels so like otherworldly, and just the entire soundtrack just like I don't know, it's just so calming. Anyway, so actually I use that as reference with my composer for Monster Tribe. We have that as one of our kind of like influences in the sound design is Hyper Light Drifter, because we also kind of have like those like ancient like sci-fi elements in our game. So
I think it's so
I guess it's a
fascinating
little
how we look back at our childhood, and that's like the most nostalgic things are like our favorite OSTs. Like I can't believe you guys haven't like listened to
Right.
Chrono Trigger, but like the stuff I grew up with was like early 2000s, late 90s. So you had like drum and bass is really popular in the UK at the time. So you hear those like tracks in a bunch of PlayStation 1 games and Nintendo 64 games. That's like but it's crazy because you guys are Zoomers and you don't even know.
Hey,
You're
bro,
listening to the
listen to-
Minecraft OST or
Bro,
something.
Yeah.
open up the
I
ice fishing
didn't grow up
theme.
with N64.
I'm telling you, you gotta listen to it, Goodgis.
Okay, live reaction right now.
I'll give a quick play on the stream while you're listening as well. It's non-copyright.
Yeah, because we're gonna get demonetized.
Yep.
on our
this
big-
video's
Everyone give it a listen. I've
Demonetized.
sent
All
it
of
in
our-
chat.
Big revenue is
Dang,
gonna go away.
that's almost like bossa nova. That's pretty chill.
It's chill, isn't it? It's such a
Wow.
good song, man.
Nice. Anyway, getting back to game engines.
Oh god, there's me bopping out to the ice fishing theme. Oh god.
Getting back to game engines, I don't think that anybody other than me answered this question. So, what are your favorite engines, guys? We'll start with Jacob because I think he's the
I
weirdest.
think everyone answered. If it's
Or-
not
well,
obvious,
you I think you said Godot, right?
no, I did. I was the only one that didn't say. But it's simple. Godot for me. Uni for
What a surprise.
Jack.
Yeah, I feel like
Jacob
I kind of
is-
explained my story.
Yeah, Jacob's a rogue, and you're sticking your guns with.
So you don't have
Kingmaker.
one then, I guess. You don't have one. Pico 8 didn't take you over after that.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
Clash.
sorry. I actually learned a lot from working in Pico 8, like stuff that I'm excited to make games with. It's weird.
You learn
like,
how not to make a game.
entities.
No, I'm kidding.
Level loading.
It's a fun
like, I'm
restriction
hyped.
for sure. Fun restriction.
Yeah.
Which I
Like,
think is
like,
another
better than
kind
Unity,
of like a cool way
unfortunately.
to learn. Yeah, that's another cool way to learn is like setting specific restrictions on yourself too, just to like maybe create more like of a fun challenge for yourself. But I personally haven't done it too much, but like I don't know, like maybe like trying to like make a game where you can't use if statements, like you can only use for loops, and
Oh god.
like just
What?
doing things outside of the box to kind of like challenge yourself, I guess, could be interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I usually do restrictions in terms of like game engines or coding languages, but I'm just saying there's ideas out there
Yeah,
that maybe
it-
we haven't explored yet.
If
No,
it
I
wasn't
think
for me wanting to make a DS game, I'd probably still be using Unity right now. That's the only thing that I basically was forced to branch out because I really wanted to make a DS game.
and
Fair enough.
I think to like wrap this up in a nice little bow tie, I think like, you know, find a game engine that you like and that you're comfortable with, but also make sure that you branch out and try new things, try different languages. Don't fall in love and only try one thing, because I mean, you're not gonna know whether you like it or not, and it could come down to like you can like Reese. He loves Game Maker Studio. That's fantastic, and it does exactly what he needs. He doesn't need to be using Unreal, Unreal's 2D. Like that's just crazy, you know. So find what's comfortable for you. It doesn't always have to be the best, the most optimized. And just if you like Scratch, well, I mean, I don't think you'll be able to sell your game, but you can still make games like, and definitely like Reese, I think that's a great idea of like pushing yourself, putting restrictions. Like make a game that's under a certain file size. Like I know that's impossible if you're using anything other than like C++. But yeah, put it like, hey, can you make a game in 10 kilobytes? What can you come up with? But I think ultimately you'll grow and you'll learn. You'll learn so much more than just being like safe in your your little place over here, just
having
learning
everything at your disposal. I would say at least like learn like 3 engines or coding languages. Because like again, it's what I started with and it's what I use now, but I have branched out, tried other engines. It's just for me personally, just it works for me. But for people watching, I would recommend try out different engines because you never know what's going to click. And that's for anything too, software as well. Like I've tried different pixel art software and I found what I like, and that's what I like. So with whatever you're using, try different resources because you don't know what's going to click until you've experienced other things. So don't get too comfortable.
Use Unreal Engine 1. It's way harder and it takes way more time.
I doubt that man's watching this. I'll be honest.
I'm referring to a comment that was left on one of Jack's videos.
I only make games in Unreal Tournament, and if you don't, then you're really bad.
Yeah. If you guys didn't already know, Unreal Engine 1 is the only true game engine. If you don't use that, then you're bad. Sorry.
Yeah.
Basically.
That's our final conclusion.
Yeah. That's it.
If you have any
conclusion, guys.
If you have any questions for the next podcast, make sure to leave them. And please ask questions. We will answer them at some point.
We need questions, guys.
Tell us in the comments below what your favorite game engine is. And if you're mad that we insulted Unity, then make sure to let us know that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you think Unity is good, then like the video. And then if you think it's bad, also like the video.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Fair enough.
And I guess the final thing, just to address the art promise that we made last episode, we are going to get around to it.
Right.
We're not doing it just yet, but hopefully we'll have a dedicated video for that challenge because we think it's cool. So we're going to spend a little bit longer on it.
So if you guys want to see us try new art styles that we've never tried before, then subscribe because that'll be a separate video coming out soon. So
Do it.
Epic.
Do it now.
All right, guys.
Like that.
See you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Brackies.
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 Oh, God.
this guy.
Oh, God, bro. That messed up the overlay real bad. All right, guys. See you soon.
I thought that was the end.